Something subtle has already shifted in the air, though most won't recognize it for what it is. What appears to be just another moonless night is, in truth, a hidden pulse moving through the architecture of reality itself. This isn't a gentle moment. It's a hush that swallows distractions, a soft lock turning inside the unseen. Closer to Earth than it should be, this particular lunation doesn't glow. It absorbs. There's no spotlight to guide decisions, only the strange clarity that comes when everything external fades to black. At times like this, silence isn't absence. It's precision, the kind that rearranges timelines without announcing itself. And here's a question worth pausing for. When everything visible pulls back, what part of a person rises to the surface? Not instinct, not logic, something older. Something that remembers the blueprint before names were given to things. This is the invitation. Not to act rashly, but to recognize that a door is present, not open, not closed, but waiting for intent to sculpt its direction. The question isn't whether the moment will change something. The question is, what will it take with it when it leaves? There's a strange kind of weight in the atmosphere right now, an invisible density that presses in without explanation. It doesn't announce itself, but it lingers just beneath the threshold of thought, waiting for someone to notice. And here's the strange part. This moment isn't passively unfolding, it's actively selecting. What gets anchored now won't be easily undone later. Energy, once unclaimed, doesn't sit idle, it migrates. So what happens when a person stands still in a moment like this? The truth is, hesitation doesn't pause the current, it just lets something else steer it. Lately, there's been this quiet chaos stirring in the background of daily life. Vivid images in sleep, decisions that hover but won't land, a push to move without knowing in which direction. Is that ringing a bell? If it is, take a moment. Actually, stop. Pause right here. What if identifying the loop is all it takes to interrupt it? This isn't superstition, it's pattern recognition. The act of declaring a direction, even softly, can sometimes recalibrate the whole system. So the real question isn't whether something is happening, it's whether it'll be shaped by choice or by default. If something inside you felt still while watching this, it means you're aligning. Subscribe and stay close, because the transmission continues. There's a small, almost invisible behavior that holds disproportionate power right now, a habit so routine, it rarely raises suspicion. And yet, within this narrow window of cosmic recalibration, that one unconscious reflex could scatter intentions before they have the chance to settle. Strange, isn't it, that the thing most likely to disturb the internal circuitry is also the thing most likely to go unnoticed. It's not about dramatic choices or external conflicts. It's subtler than that, more like an energetic leak disguised as a thought pattern. So here's a moment to check in. Has anything repeated lately that feels oddly insignificant but strangely draining? If so, that's not noise. That's a signal. What's approaching isn't just a shift in frequency, it's an exchange. This particular lunar threshold doesn't merely absorb, it barters. And in that trade, clarity comes at the cost of distraction. So maybe ask this: what's being surrendered without consent simply because it was never named? Because sometimes all it takes to break a pattern is to catch it mid-step, before it vanishes back into the blur of the ordinary. What's retreating right now isn't vanishing in the way most people think. This isn't an erasure, it's an extraction. And what's left behind is far more unsettling than absence. The nature of this lunar event isn't destructive, but surgical. It creates a vacuum, and that's the part most overlook. Silence in this context isn't calm. It's an unguarded opening, and every fragment that lifts, be it a forgotten emotion, an outdated belief, or an unfinished decision, leaves a hollow space in its wake. That vacancy doesn't stay idle for long. The laws of inner movement don't allow for that. So here's something worth asking. What tends to slip into unoccupied spaces when no filter has been set? Think about it. In moments of mental quiet, is it peace that rushes in or clutter? Because this isn't just about releasing, it's about curating what arrives next. The window has already opened, and it won't stay that way forever. Without conscious selection, The closest influence, no matter how irrelevant or chaotic, becomes the default occupant. And once that happens, it's not easy to tell which thoughts are personal and which were just picked up by proximity. If you understood even part of this, it means the signal is reaching you. Subscribe. The rest will make sense soon enough. Not all energy in circulation right now is compatible, and blending with the wrong frequency can feel subtle at first, until it isn't. While most continue on, treating this cosmic event like background static, a small subset has already begun preparing for a very particular alignment that arrives just before the shift peaks. Call it calibration, call it code. What matters is that it's happening beneath the noise, in a layer most won't notice until it's already passed. And here's a curious thing to sit with. What if the clarity being searched for doesn't come in the spotlight, but in the blackout? There's a tendency to associate darkness with danger, but maybe the real hazard is in fleeing from it too fast. After all, light reveals what's there. Shadow reveals what's missing. So what if the silence on that date isn't emptiness, but access? Consider this. Are the most profound downloads given in chaos, or in stillness so deep it almost feels like nothing? The choice to engage with that moment isn't about mysticism, it's about signal range. Those tuned in won't be louder, just sharper. And by the time the rest of the world notices, the transmission will already be complete. This phase doesn't communicate in spectacle. It resonates in stillness, in the untouched density of absence. It won't blink or flash or knock. Its language is the ancient tongue of the void, the one most forgot how to listen to. There's a threshold approaching, and before it's crossed, a very specific gesture is required. Not performance, not ceremony, but removal. No glow, no hum, no fragrance, just a return to the unfiltered state, the one that exists before anything is added. 6 uninterrupted minutes in complete dark. Sounds simple, right? Until the external world fades and the internal one refuses to stay quiet. That's not a problem, that's the signal. What surfaces during that time, be it a fragment of memory, an emotion without context, or an echo that defies translation, is the exact substance being surfaced for review. Let it be. Don't grip it, don't dissect it, just watch. This isn't a silence to be created, it's a silence to be met. Most cannot last even half that time without reaching for some form of anchor. And maybe that's the test. Can awareness remain steady without leaning on definition? Sit with that, because whatever comes next will be shaped by what was allowed to emerge in that space. Experience doesn't always follow chronology, it often follows narrative. And once external interference quiets down, the terrain becomes ripe for something deceptively simple, yet neurologically profound. This technique isn't about manifestation in the wishful sense. It's about preloading the psyche with a reference point that hasn't technically happened yet. The trick? Speak the future like it's already in the rear view. Not with forced conviction, but with the ease of a passing recollection. Something along the lines of, "It's wild to think how clear things became that week in June." Or, "That moment at the cafe, how it unfolded so naturally, keeps coming back to me." Nothing scripted, just fragments, as if pulling them from a lived past. Here's where it gets interesting. The body doesn't always question the source of a memory, it just responds. And when spoken aloud, the space begins to shift around that signal. Most cast their future as a maybe. Memory seeding treats it as a certainty that already happened. That's a different kind of signal, one that doesn't beg, it embeds. And before brushing this off as poetic thinking, ask this. What if exhaustion right now isn't fatigue, but calibration? What if what feels heavy is just the translation of something sacred, anchoring in real time? Still thinking about what you just heard? That's not an accident. Subscribe. Let what's waking up in you keep unfolding. One of the most overlooked indicators of cosmic movement is the body's silent shift into another mode of awareness. Right before a major lunar reset, strange sensations often rise without explanation. Tightness in the chest, cravings with no nutritional logic, temperature shifts crawling across the skin, sudden pressure behind the eyes, pulses in the extremities, or sleep that doesn't just rest but resets. These aren't symptoms. They're signals. The body, after all, is the first language the moon ever spoke to. Long before names were given to cycles, physiology was already syncing to the rhythm of the sky. The strange part? The body never asks for belief, it just responds. Most shrug these reactions off, chalk them up to stress, hormones, weather, or screens. But what if it's none of that? What if the discomfort isn't a flaw but a message being routed through the oldest translator available? Try this. Instead of analyzing the feeling, speak to it, literally. If the chest feels heavy, ask it what it's holding. If salt or sugar suddenly calls louder than usual, ask what's missing or overworked. Stillness and restlessness both carry intelligence. They're not noise, they're navigation. And here's the part most forget. When the body feels heard, it relaxes its resistance. That's when deeper insight slips in, unfiltered, clean, direct. So next time the fatigue hits or the craving makes no sense, don't override it. Don't silence it. Consider asking instead, what are you trying to show me and why now? Not every shift announces itself with incense and symmetry. Sometimes the most profound arrivals sneak in sideways, barefoot, unplanned, wearing no ritual at all. There's a quiet secret no one really talks about. The most potent lunar moments don't ask for curated spaces or choreographed intention. They prefer rawness, a kind of sacred clumsiness that can't be rehearsed. Between now and the 3rd, try something disruptive. Not symbolically, but literally. Set a random alarm, nothing sacred, nothing aesthetic. Let it pierce an ordinary moment. And when it does, pause, close the eyes. Speak a simple phrase aloud. I'm listening. That act alone is a fracture in pattern, and that fracture becomes a gate. Cosmic data rarely flows through ceremony. It prefers gaps, surprises, breaks in the loop. And here's a question that might linger long after the alarm fades. What happens when the universe finally notices someone paying attention without expectation? Spontaneity isn't chaos, it's availability. Most treat spirituality like a performance. But what if the deepest frequency scans for unscripted presence? The kind that forgets the stage, forgets the lighting, and simply breathes in the moment without agenda. That's when something else starts paying attention back. Not because the moment was flawless, but because it was real. You're not here by mistake. If this felt like home, it probably is. Subscribe and stay where the deeper truths live. There's a particular kind of energy that doesn't decay, it just waits. Somewhere in the backdrop of ordinary life, there's a forgotten thread, an idea half-formed, a vision shelved mid-sentence, a passion paused without ceremony. It wasn't abandoned with intention. It was just left mid-breath when the pace of life became louder than its whisper. And yet, even now, that thread remains warm, not expired, not gone, just suspended, like a page bookmarked and waiting to be turned again. This current lunar window doesn't only amplify beginnings, it circles back to the places where attention slipped, but interest never truly died. If certain memories or sparks have started resurfacing, glimpses of work left untouched, drafts unsent, melodies half-formed, it's no accident. That material is responding to the signal, and the invitation is simple. Don't rebuild the entire thing, just touch it again. Spend 3 quiet minutes with it, no outcome, no urgency. Pull it from the shadows not to fix it, but to witness it again. This isn't about momentum, it's about magnetic reconnection. Sometimes all a vision needs is to feel the gaze return, and sometimes the future isn't built from scratch, but from a flicker that never fully dimmed. So let's ask something simple here. What if the thing most needed tomorrow is the very thing paused last season? What if it's been waiting for this moon to stir it back awake? Here's a practice that may seem odd at first glance, but carries an unexpected weight beneath its simplicity. Take one specific comfort, something edible, nostalgic, perhaps even childlike. Not just food, but something the body craves when it reaches for familiarity or softness. Name it internally, then delay it, not forever, just until the moon completes its silent work. This isn't deprivation, it's redirection. Craving is condensed electricity, a signal wrapped in flesh and flavor. When it's held, not silenced, it accumulates heat, and that heat becomes fuel. During this phase, the body's frequency isn't fixed. It's dissolving and remapping, and every urge that emerges is part of the blueprint being adjusted. To pause the craving is to pause the automatic, to hold the spark rather than burn it. That's not control, that's alchemy. And isn't it interesting how saving something can sometimes make it stronger? When the ritual completes, that bite won't just taste richer, it will mean more. Because it wasn't eaten in passing, it was chosen. The desire didn't vanish, it matured. So here's the invitation. Let the craving rise like low fire and sit with it. Don't fight it. Just acknowledge its presence and let the tension mount. That inner build is energy in its rawest form. And what gets built in that stillness? That's a question worth remembering. There's a subtle mechanism activated by this particular moon, one often missed because it hides in plain sight. Reflection. Not metaphorical reflection, but literal. Surfaces that bounce back light, form, and energy. These are not passive objects right now. Under this frequency, even a phone screen or bathroom mirror becomes a reactive surface. They don't just echo visuals, they echo mood, intention, confusion, and focus. And when the lunar field is shifting this dramatically, those surfaces don't simply reflect, they refract. A familiar glance in the mirror becomes layered with impressions from within and around. Ever felt that quiet unease after catching your own eyes for too long? That slight tug in the chest, like something is watching through the gaze, not just at it? It's not performance, it's permeability. This moon doesn't just thin veils between worlds, it thins veils between versions of self. And in that thinning, there's risk, not of danger, but of disorientation. The moment attention drifts into the surface, energy disperses. No rituals are required to guard against it, just awareness. No need to cover glass or fear reflection. Simply resist the instinct to stare. Let the reflection blur, let it remain unread. Because decoding it pulls focus outward, when the real work, the real signal is emerging from within. If there's ever a moment where that gaze lingers too long, just interrupt it. Blink, shift, reset. Not from fear, but from sovereignty. The self being shaped by this moon isn't the one caught in the glass. It's the one choosing not to linger there. Under this particular lunar frequency, the senses don't just observe, they seek. Not comfort, but contrast. And among the most intimate of those senses is taste, not in its indulgent form, but as an initiator of tension. This isn't about cravings. It's about choosing the flavor that rarely gets chosen. That one taste or texture quietly rejected again and again. Not for harm, but for unfamiliarity. A bitterness that lingers, a grain that resists, a spice that overwhelms. Not dangerous, just uninviting. Place it in the mouth, not as a test, but as a mirror. Notice what happens. The system jolts, the field stirs. Where comfort would have settled, resistance enters like static, sharp, awake, exact. In that flicker of discomfort, something opens. Energy reroutes. The act of accepting what isn't easy becomes a declaration. Not everything sacred needs to be sweet. Just a bite. That's all it takes. No need to finish. Just remain present long enough to feel the nervous system shift, not in fear, but in recognition. There's a stillness that follows, strange and exact, where the body stops chasing the expected and meets the unfamiliar with reverence. And maybe that's the ritual, honoring what doesn't cater to preference. After all, isn't it in the unplanned, the slightly uncomfortable, where the wildest breakthroughs hide? Sit with that taste. Let the reaction rise. Let it transform. The moon takes note of those who sit in discomfort without running. It speaks clearest to those who stay when the flavor doesn't. When the final hour approaches and the date prepares to turn, something quiet but immense begins to stir. Midnight is not just a number, it's an aperture, a slim hinge between unseen layers where form and intention momentarily blur. At this edge of time, ritual doesn't need grandeur. It needs precision, No candles, no crystals, no incense. Just stillness, silence thick enough to feel. The air changes texture. The room begins to listen, and in that rare pause, a question emerges. Not in words, but in sensation. What future is already forming beneath the surface? Don't chase it. Don't narrate. Let it gather into the center of the chest like mist, thickening into weight. And from that weight, allow one word to rise, not a sentence, not an explanation. One word only, small, potent, fully owned. Speak it. Let it break the silence with calm intention. That single utterance becomes more than sound. It becomes direction, a kind of spiritual coordinate marked in the lunar tide. The moon, though hidden, absorbs frequencies in their rawest form. It does not forget. That word becomes an anchor, a beacon, a code. And once released, let it go. No need to repeat, no need to watch. The moment is sealed, and the cycle begins to bend toward it. So now ask quietly, what is the one word that holds all others beneath it? If this voice is still in the room with you, that means something stayed. Maybe a word, maybe a question, maybe just the space this created. Whatever it was, it meant the silence between sentences wasn't wasted. Not every journey ends with clarity. Some end with a shift too subtle to name, but too real to ignore. So here's a small gesture to seal what's been stirred. Leave something behind. An impression, a note, a symbol of what rose up in the quiet. Speak it into the comments if language finds you, or just mark the space in your own way. And if this kind of reflection feels like something worth returning to, there's more ahead. No need to chase it, just follow what resonates. Subscribing isn't a transaction here, it's a signal. A way of saying this rhythm aligns, this dialogue matters. So thank you for the time, the stillness, the attention. Until the next turning, hold what surfaced gently. Let it echo in the background. And when the next moment